I think we're ready to get started here. We'll keep letting people in as they arrive, but my formal good morning to everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for Windows on Waterloo today. Hope you all had a great holiday weekend and are kind of back at it for this week as we start a new month. My name is Paige Price. I am the program manager at the Waterloo Community Foundation. I'm kind of a new face around here, so you might not recognize me quite yet, but excited to be here and even more excited to have our presenters for Windows this month. We are so fortunate to have Paul Hudding, City of Waterloo's Leisure Services Director. We have Mark Kuiper from Ritland and Kuiper Landscape Architects, and then Felicia Smith-Nalls, who was our former Waterloo Neighborhood Services Coordinator, and is now at Tyson's Foods, but has been really involved in this project throughout. So we're so lucky to have some time from all of them to hear about the upcoming updates to two of our city's major parks, to Gates Park and Byrnes Park. And they're going to give us a look at what we can expect from these updates that are coming. So we hope to have time for some Q&A at the end. Like I already said, if you have questions throughout, you can put those into the chat. Otherwise, we'll have time at the end that you can unmute and ask those as well. But with that, I will pass it over to Paul, and we'll get our presentation started.
Okay, let's try this again. Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Hudding with Leisure Services. Excited to be here today. I had a little computer glitch just a moment ago that bumped me off, and I'm back on again. So we are happy today to present our really cool project of transforming two of our anchor parks in Waterloo. Gates Park and Byrnes Park are well known to all of us here, and they both have some issues that need attention. So we're launching a really exciting project. I am going to attempt to share my screen now.
He looks for the plan. I can speak to, there was such a level of care taken into making sure that this plan was both equitable and had the voice of the community in it. As the neighborhood services person then, since Gates had the flood wall put up, and we had looked at the Gates versus Byrnes situation, equity-wise, that felt gross. And so I was really proud of our city for choosing to look at this in an equitable way and really look at what does the community value? What does the community want on both sides of town? What can these areas be, and what could we dream of? And so it was a great opportunity in those starting stages where people were allowed to dream and were asked, what do you want to see here? And it was when everyone saw the first drafts, there were real tears because people felt so moved that an opportunity to create something that special at Gates meant a lot to people that haven't really seen a lot invested in Gates or on that side of town. But I wanted you all to know that the equity process of these meetings with not only unity leaders, but people that actually have organizations that use the park, different sports coaches, different community groups that host things and saying, we could host this even bigger, or this could be bigger. So the ability that even these planning stages have inspired so many dreams that this is a project that even since I've left the city, my heart is in it, not just as a daughter of Waterloo, but for all of the inspiration that this park could create through touching not only the lives of tens of thousands of kids, but families as well.
Thanks, Felicia. Since I can't seem to get my PowerPoint to come up, I'm just going to continue and kind of give you a background. So the transforming of Gates and Byrnes Park originated with a master plan study to replace or repair our pools. Both of our pools at Byrnes and Gates are malfunctioning, to say the least. There is water in both of the pools as we speak, but both are leaking. They were built 42 years ago, and they definitely have come to the end of their lifespan. So that spawned a master plan study that was done by Ballard King. And in the process of looking at our pools and evaluating what we might do in the future, we had a comprehensive look at Gates Park and Byrnes Park to decide what might best be done. And Felicia was alluding to a task force that she was part of. Actually, we called it the Gates Park Focus Group. As part of the aquatic study, we found that there were a lot of needs at Gates Park that went beyond just aquatics. So that focus group came up with a whole list of potential improvements that could be done that then spun off into a master plan for Gates Park that Mark Kuiper with Kuiper was involved with. And Mark, is it possible that you might be able to share your screen with some of the images of the Gates Park project? Okay, we're starting. You got the whole presentation here. So
yeah,
great.
Paul, why don't you talk about the master plan that kind of preempted the study that went into the Gates and Byrnes and the whole aquatic situation, and kind of how the city and the schools are partnered in that, before I get into Gates in particular.
Well, the master plan resulted in, and it was approved both by the Leisure Services Commission and the City Council of Waterloo. And that study showed that moving forward, we should do a whole host of improvements at Gates Park to include a water feature, but also to move ahead with a swimming pool, replacing the pool at Byrnes with a new aquatic center. From the equity standpoint, there were concerns about equal access to swimming and swim lessons throughout the community. We've instituted a program with Waterloo schools and also have another one going now with Boys Girls Club, where we teach kids to swim who might traditionally not sign up for swim lessons. Kids 5th through 8th grade throughout the school system have an option to come learn to swim in our pools. We've also used some of the school pools for that. But in a nutshell, we're planning the complete renovation of the swimming facilities at Gates, and then a whole host of facilities that Mark will kind of run through. The new swimming pool at Byrnes and a whole host of facilities at Gates. So Mark, if you want to just kind of run through what you have planned for Gates, that'd be great.
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, so Aaron, why don't you, did you want to talk about the conditions of the existing facilities, Paul?
Well, as long as you've got these up here, yeah, this is a quote from the aquatic planner, Matt Freeby from Water Technologies Incorporated, and they were part of our design team, and they will be part of the design team moving forward. So his quote, you can read it, is, if you called me when I was on the ride home tomorrow and told me one of the pools failed, I would not be shocked. I think he's probably more shocked that the pools are both up and running right now. They're leaking heavily. Kudos go out to our maintenance team who every day are monitoring and making sure that the water is safe and that the pools are full, but it's really kind of on a shoestring right now. So Mark, do you want to, and yeah, those are some of the pictures of the existing conditions. We did lose entire season of 2019 at Gates Pool because the main drain failed and the walls were starting to cave in on the deep end. So we had to shorten that up from 12 foot to 8 foot as a temporary fix. So it's just 42 years, aluminum pools that are starting to corrode heavily. It's time to replace them. This is the Gates conditions, similar, built at the same time. And then this slide reviews the public input process. We did have, as Felicia alluded to, a lot of opportunity for public input. It started with a survey to the general public. And then we had a public input meeting at the Sportsplex where we invited anyone who had interest to come and participate, share their ideas about moving forward for the city of Waterloo. And then that spun into the Gates Park focus group that we've already talked about that came up with a number of ideas that Britland Kuiper, Mark's firm, has expanded upon. That then became the master plan. And then we had 3 evening meetings, the initial aquatics meeting, the dream meeting with focus group, and then a presentation of sketches and layouts that came later. And then we had the city council work session, which was public and is also available online for you to view. And then the Leisure Services Commission had a public vote on the plan. The final action was February 21, City Council approved the master plan. So this is where we were going to introduce Felicia, but she thankfully jumped in to fill the void and started talking about these things. But these are some of the things that were found by the committee, that the park seemed to be forgotten and really needed some transformational investments. And we are planning on investing approximately $8 million in each of the parks. It may be more than that, knowing now what construction costs are doing and have been doing over the last year or so. We're doing really well on fundraising, but we may have to raise a little more than the 16 million, which was the original estimate. We can move to the next slide. One question that was looked at heavily is, should the city really be in the business of aquatics? And that even came from a suggestion from one former city council member that we just coordinate with Lost Island, since they have one of the best water parks in the city and are one of the best water parks in the state or the country. And the main problem with that was that it's clear on the south end of the community, not really totally accessible, but beyond that, there's no body of water for teaching. And teaching is a big part of our mission at Leisure Services. Teaching people to swim is a life skill that's really important. And so we needed a traditional body of water and an affordable place for our residents and visitors to swim and recreate. Next slide. Again, these are the conclusions from the Ballard King study. They said that we could support in Waterloo an indoor aquatic center, which we have here at the Sportsplex, and then 1.5 outdoor aquatic centers, which is kind of a strange number to deal with. But that 1.5 will be realized by having the aquatic center at Byrnes and then aquatic features at Gates Park. We do have the indoor pool here, and we do have a good working relationship with Waterloo Schools for using their pools as well. And then they also recommended at this point that Gates Park have a comprehensive master plan, and that a spray pad should be part of that master plan, and that the Byrnes Park pool should be replaced. Next slide. So the equity question was a big one, and We have a long history in Waterloo of east and west, which in my mind are actually north and south. I grew up in this city. For some reason, we decided that the river was the dividing point and everything on the south was the east side, and everything on the south was west side, and everything on the north was the east. So it's kind of confusing, especially if you come in from out of the area. But Gates and Byrnes Park have traditionally been the two major parks in the city, kind of the signature parks. So it was important to have a similar investment in both. Both parks have golf courses and a whole variety of other facilities. They're community-wide attractions. So this plan will attract users from throughout the city to both major parks, and it probably will go well beyond the borders of Waterloo with some of the features that Mark will tell us about in a little bit, particularly the inclusion park, which is very, very popular throughout the country now, the whole idea of inclusion parks. We have one in our neighboring city in Cedar Falls that's very well used, to the point of them being happy to hear that we may be putting one in Waterloo to kind of reduce some of the pressure on a place to play in Cedar Falls. The Gates Park Focus Group has endorsed all these amenities in the master plan, and we're partnering with Met Transit for a shuttle or trolley program once we get everything up and running, so that we can go both ways from Byrnes to Gates and back, and possibly some downtown amenities along the way. Next slide. Okay, Mark, now you're up. You can't get out of it this time. You have to talk.
Thanks, Paul.
Certainly.
Yeah, so it's been great working with the city on this, and with the focus group that Felicia highlighted, and including Felicia herself, just being a part of that discussion of if you could do anything at Gates Park, what would it be? What would you like to see in your neighborhood? What would you like to see? And they talked about equity. We talked about access. We talked about the activities that they were interested in. And so the plans that you're going to see next kind of are the evolution of that discussion, and what was possible and what was available for land, and balancing those needs and wants, not only for the neighborhood, but even citywide. How could Gates Park actually serve as something that would draw people from other parts of the city to be a part of the activities in that park? And likewise, how could Byrnes serve as another anchor point, and continue to serve as an anchor point with aquatics? And so that's kind of how these plans were born out. So just an overview, I think people generally know, but some folks not knowing where Gates Park is exactly. So the north-south on the screen, Highway 63 is running. It is sort of the red line there. And then that's Donald Street on the top, and so Allen Hospital would be on the top left corner of this screen, just for orientation. So Gates Park is attached to the golf course there. There's these large park spaces, and you can kind of see the graphics that we're going to walk through kind of superimposed on the aerial, showing the north end improvements is kind of the drawing up in the top, and then you transition into a soccer field and some middle sculpture park improvements in the middle there. That's the former Chamberlain site, and so that's a reimagining of that site. And then the south end is the area adjacent to Verdon Creek that had the flood wall installation. So coming in there and really revitalizing that area as well. So we'll just step through those as we go here. So the north end, big picture wise, it includes improved parking. There's really very little parking on site now. What parking does exist is actually gravel up for the pool. The pool would generally be where that Easter egg looking, that's actually the new basketball court amphitheater complex. That's in the location where the existing pool is now, and so that's up on the hill. And then the lower area is currently tennis courts that would be transformed, and they're sort of dilapidated and in need of something anyway. And so the lower area then would be transformed into a splash pad and an inclusive playground. And so both areas would have parking. There would be recreation trail connections to both, kind of utilizing some of the existing trails that exist there now and then adding on to them. And so we'll step into a little bit more detailed looks of each. So this spray pad park, again, working with Water Technologies, the great thing about spray pads is they actually allow the city to expand the hours of operation, because you don't have to have staff, lifeguards and that kind of thing, or even ticket takers. It's free access, so that also fills that equity gap in terms of there's not a fee required to use them. And they also expand the operating season, whereas a larger body of water, you'll have because of staff reasons and also just people's general use patterns with school and that kind of thing, you generally closed when school starts, and you don't start that early because people aren't swimming in May generally, or in early May for sure. And so we have expanded hours on a day, we expanded operating season, and they're free to access. And we've seen this operate in Marks Park in downtown Waterloo. That's not named after me, but that's adjacent to the amphitheater, and that's had heavy use, really too heavy use for what it was designed for. And so there's definitely a desire for these parks. And so there's some quick concept renderings of that spray pad area, and some ideas that we had for equipment in that space. This is the upper area, which I said was where the existing pool is. And there would be a performance structure that would be the larger brown rectangle would be a performance structure. So that could serve both as an area for large group gatherings, picnics, that kind of thing, but also it's an elevated stage. So we could have DJs, we could have bands giving concerts there. And we've created an amphitheater space by excavating approximately 8 feet out of where the pool is now. And we keep all of the large existing trees that surround the pool up on top of those mounds. And we depress the area where the pool is to create an amphitheater effect that helps acoustically, visually, and just in terms of containing the sound and that kind of thing from the neighborhood. And so there would be that performance structure, there'd be restroom facility, the parking I mentioned earlier, and the trail connections I mentioned earlier. So there's the next slide has a rendering of what that might look like for, I think that helps to see a perspective view. So you can kind of see how those mounds with the existing trees surround these courts. The Gates Park Youth Basketball League has a very rich history, long history of operation. It used to be operated in Gates Park on the south end of the park. And I actually played in it when I was in high school. And it was a great community and family gathering. There'd be music, there'd be food, there'd be basketball going on, and it was a great event. And as those courts became more dilapidated and out of use, they were trying to find a home for that. They've been operating on another site. But when we kind of cast a vision for bringing that back and just celebrating it and making it an anchor part of this park, we have a lot of positive feedback from what that might look like and how that might reinvigorate that event. We've also designed this in a way that it could be used as a roller rink. There's quite a bit of dance and roller skating developing nationwide, pockets of them in urban areas in other cities. And there was some interest in seeing if there would be some development of some dance groups even here in Waterloo, and really backing that up and encouraging that as another community activity. Kind of a on court view of that, just gets you a sense for what that space might feel like with the mounds and the trees around it. So then the inclusive playground and the splash pad here on the lower end, there'd be a plaza entry on the south end. You'd park on the south side of this, come in from the south into that plaza entry, and then you'd be able to have a nice playful gate entry there. Probably looking at some memorial type of signage as part of that gateway plaza. For those that would be like to put a memorial gift into this is a tremendous opportunity. Just putting my fundraising hat on for Paul. This will be a real landmark project in a landmark park, and so we really see some really cool opportunities there. So the splash pad would be on the left. There's an existing shelter there that would support that splash pad. There would be a lower spray area, and then we're thinking of having a transition with a ramp and to a higher spray area, and actually a small little waterfall type feature that kids could sort of work their way down and splash in and that kind of thing. As part of that design. Then there's sort of a mound in between them. These are fenced individually, separately from each other, so parents can sort of monitor when their kids are in this space, or when they are transitioning out. They can go with them, but they can even sit at the gate if they'd like to make sure that their kids are safely playing in the space and not having to watch them every moment. We found that really to be helpful for parents in a lot of these types of spaces. So the inclusive playground would then be on the right and transitioning to the top, and it would be sort of a series of separate spaces. We've looked at programming of the play equipment. The curvy line on the right hand side, that's sort of S snake shaped. That would actually be an ascending ramp up to 8 feet of elevation, so that all abilities would be able to access the top of that large play structure that's in light blue. And there'd be slides and climbing on all of that. We have a lot of different types of equipment. Inclusive playground, just to kind of explain that word, it's so many things have become handicap accessible, and you'll go to any playground now and you'll see handicap accessible equipment. There's often long ramps involved in that, and lots of opportunities on that ramp. But they actually end up feeling a little bit like a TSA line at the airport, in my opinion. In terms of experience, they're long and linear and sort of cookie cutter. You can go to one and you feel like you've been at all of them. This inclusive playground is designed to sort of take those pieces of equipment apart and make them each a separate experience. And that not only helps from an accessibility standpoint, but we can also program it for all ages, all abilities, mentally and physically, and give kids an opportunity to have that, and also parents an opportunity to access their children while they're in those spaces without having to walk through a structure or wonder where in the structure their child is. It's very easy to observe where your children are in these spaces. And so we also like to work them into the landform. So there's sort of a hill here. There's lots of existing large trees. And so we've worked this design around those existing trees into that hillside to look like it's been there for 50 years, which is how we feel this park should look new and fresh, but also classy and modern in its own way. And it's a sort of the splash pad rendering then is the next one, and kind of gives you a feel for how that space might look. There's a restroom and shower facility and a pump room between the two spaces that separates the two. So those could be accessed from both directions. And this is some of the equipment. I won't go through that in a lot of detail. One thing about that ascending ramp on the right is that there's actually a tunnel that would access and create a separate quiet space adjacent to a large tree. on the backside of that. And we think that'll be a cool space. Then as we transition, we're connecting the north and south ends of the park with a recreational trail. That's sort of the white ribbon flowing through there. There is a soccer field that exists there, but it's not in great shape, and it's served by a sort of a sloped gravel parking lot that's out of view and doesn't necessarily feel all that safe. So we're looking at opening up the views into that space and providing a better parking access from that former Chamberlain site. There's an existing parking lot there, and then making a trail connection down into that space, adding some playground equipment and a shelter so that could be utilized by families that want to activate that. There's families and community groups that activate that soccer space now, and this would really serve them a lot better. And safer and a lot easier to observe as well. And then the middle area would be a sculpture garden is kind of the concept. We're going to take that soil that we excavated out of that pool area on the north end and create a series of mounds and earthwork forms, and then have pathways that could be weaved through there. In the interim, all of that area would be planted in prairie, and with the idea that native landscape would be an opportunity for education and honestly just an environmental benefit for the area. But also long term, we would hope that this area would evolve with we're exploring ideas with local artists and or local African American themes, historical themes, and even I would like to see opportunities for African American artists to be able to showcase their work, whether that was telling the story of Waterloo or various parts of that story, but just a real opportunity to highlight that as part of this sculpture park experience. And Felicia's pretty excited about that idea, and I'm excited to see what evolves with that space as well.
Mark, this is Paul again, could we pause for a moment and let Felicia kind of share her ideas on this area? I know she's passionate about it, so let's give her a chance to say a few words about the sculpture garden area.
You bet.
I was thinking of something very similar to what downtown Des Moines has. I was thinking of a place where it's the spot to get married, the spot to take prom pictures, that spot. But the other part is it's the spot for businesses to really leave their legacy project in Waterloo. Like, we're not talking about lightweight sculptures. We're talking about the pieces that people would travel to see, world-renowned sculptors that would have a theme around the North End story and what that looks like. But we have been looking at some serious ideas in art. I also am the interim ED for the North End Cultural Center, and we've been working with the Waterloo for the Arts and a filmmaker named Francesca Sloan, looking at an Our Town grant that focuses on art pieces. And so we're looking at actually trying to help fund this through grants, but also seeing what businesses would be willing to sponsor a good size sculpture on those grounds. I think it'd be great that as we even build that we can use some of those flat spaces for live entertainers, strolling strings, live painters to sit and paint. That space is an endless possibilities for sharing some of the history of Waterloo and just having some cool art to inspire people.
Thanks, Felicia. And Mark, we should probably be clear that this space is part of the plan, but the actual development of the art, sculpture, and the other components will be a project that'll be taken on separately. And Felicia definitely has the passion for that. I know the Waterloo Center for the Arts is prepared to do some grant writing and so forth for that as well. So I kind of look at this space as being the palette for that, but also a connecting point. We should make folks aware too that it is a brownfield site, the former Chamberlain manufacturing site, and it does need some additional cleanup before it can be completely developed. But definitely a future exciting connecting way between north gates and south gates, or as others know it, little gates and big gates. So Mark, I'll let you continue now. Thanks. And thank you, Felicia.
So just looking at a little bit closer, so you can see the playground, the shelter, and the soccer field improvements. And the sculpture pads, and kind of if you can envision those mounds of prairie and the pathways kind of mowed through there and maybe eventually paved through there. So this is the south end, and those familiar with this area along Lester Street, the city needed to come in with some flood improvements in order to protect the homes. There was some real potential flooding issues in that area that they had to take care of. And in that process, some of the views were cut off even further than they were before of the sort of the nice part of this park. It's hard to see it from the street. And so the idea here is, again, to take some of that soil from the north end and create a series of mounds along the face of this wall, sort of in front of this wall, and then have trees planted on that, and basically just forming extending the concept of the rolling terrain with the trees that's on the north end of this park, and extending it here, and really taking the wall completely out of view for most of the park. Really cleaning up most of what's there. There's a lot of existing leftover pads of parking and that kind of thing, consolidating into one smaller parking area more suitable for the persons that will be attending events on this end. There won't really be heavy programming of this end. But we did want to provide those opportunities for smaller family gatherings. So there is a picnic shelter. We had a half-court basketball court here for if there's events going on in the north end and kids from the neighborhood still wanted to play basketball, they'd have that opportunity. There's a small restroom here, and then relocating the play equipment out of the floodplain into a play space on this side of the wall. And then we looked at some signage on the corner, which you'll see on the next slide. So right now, that's kind of that view of that flood wall, and it's kind of imposing on that corner. And we thought, well, what can we do to sort of utilize that? And one thing that this park currently doesn't have is monument signage. And so we transformed that wall using kind of the same materials palette that was utilized along University Avenue. So it'd be a brick or a limestone facing, and some metal panels with some lettering attached to it to create a monument signage. And then again, you can start to see that mounding and additional trees and how that starts to screen off the impact visually of that wall, and trying to turn a negative into a positive visually on that corner. And I want to just say that both for Byrnes and Gates Parks, we've put together a great design team for both sites. it'll be Rittley and Kuiper, the firm that I'm working with, as well as Envision Architecture, AECOM, Modus Engineering, and then Water Technologies on the aquatic side. And so we have a great team of designers that's going to work on both of these projects, and we're going to work them in concert so that the design materials for these two anchor parks in Waterloo not only work for what Waterloo has elsewhere, but also we hope serve as anchor parks and anchor designs for what the Waterloo Park look actually looks like. It's a real opportunity to sort of reimagine and rebrand both of these parks, and we're really excited about that. So here's the Byrnes Park pool concept and Water Technologies. This is still sort of evolving as we look at the site. We've got the team working on the survey, putting the survey together so we can develop the site plan. This is sort of superimposed on the aerial, what it would look like with that pool facility, but we're still working on where the buildings are going to be and how these different pieces are going to lay out. But we do have the programming put together. We worked with Leisure Services Aquatics consultants. Bree in particular has been great in giving us input on what they'd like to see. So you can kind of see some of the programming that's going to be involved. This will be where the teaching is happening. The new bathhouse concessions, a slide tower, a lot of zero depth play space, and then there's really just need to replace a lot of the existing equipment and pump facilities within those buildings because they're very old. Yeah, so like I said, we're really excited about how this area will transition as well. And I think Paul talked about it briefly, but I just want to say that the way that the city has partnered with the school district has really been a powerful model for how that citywide swim education program can really break down some of those barriers that have existed from an equity standpoint, just making sure that kids have great access to swim lessons, not only to be safe, but also just to gain an appreciation for swimming. And I think the city's doing a great job taking that step with the school district. Here's a rendering of that pool concept. And again, that's basically just casting a vision for what it might look like. We're still playing with where all the pieces will end up, but it'll be something like that.
Thanks, Mark. This is Paul again. Just want to kind of give you an update on fundraising. We're very encouraged, the support we're seeing from the community for this project. As I mentioned before, originally about 16 million. We know it's probably 16 million plus, but we have a really good start on it. We have received 6.5 million from Blackhawk County Gaming Association, and that's their largest gift ever for a project since they came into existence. So that's pretty exciting. 4.5 million is being programmed by the city of Waterloo through the capital improvements program. Some of that money is in hand and is being used for the design contracts that Mark was referencing. We have, as of last night, received officially $1 million from the McElroy Trust board. They approved that. So we have $12 million committed, and then we have a whole host of other applications and communications going on. Some of those are with Otto Schoitz Foundation, Banji Miller Family Charitable Trust, the Enhance Iowa Community Attraction and Tourism Grant, the CAT grant, people know it as, is something that we'll be turning in about another week or so. And I'm happy to say the Blackhawk County Board of Supervisors approved a $50,000 match from their budget for that. So we just have a lot of fundraising going. We've got interest from the John Deere Foundation. We've presented to them. Northeast Iowa Community Foundation has received a presentation and is looking into various funders that they have who are interested. So, and we've begun to reach out to financial institutions in the area, and we'll be reaching out to Max and Helen Guernsey Foundation. I'm probably missing something there, but when you add all those up, I don't know all the numbers yet. We're getting really close to our original amount that we felt we needed to raise. We know it's going to have to be a little more than that, but to fill the gaps, we're not looking into, we've just announced with the Waterloo Community Foundation a grassroots fundraising effort, and that's being jump-started by $25,000 that's in hand now, and that's from the Van G. Miller or the VGM Employees Fund and the Ragbri Committee, and that money came from the Ragbri proceeds from last year's event. So just really excited to get going with the grassroots fundraising. We know there's a lot of support in the community, and every donation is going to be important to make this plan a reality. Again, we do have a design contract with Kuiper that was approved on June 20th, and we have a design contract with Envision Architecture. Those are for the two projects that Mark referenced before, and that the funding is in hand for those. So projected time frame, we intend to remove the gate, well, we'll call it groundbreaking this fall. The Gates Pool deconstruction, demolition will begin, and we will be working on the Gates Park project all through next construction season. The Byrnes pool will be deconstructed starting a year from this fall, and we hope to and plan to have everything done by the summer of 2024. So that's kind of our project in a nutshell. We're very excited about it. We're open for questions. I think, Paige, you said you were going to kind of monitor those questions as they came in. I think I saw one or two popping up.
Yes, yep, we have one. And I wanted to mention too that if you are interested in donating to that grassroots campaign, Erin put the link directly to that fund that you can donate online. So you can just click that link in the chat if that's something you're interested in. But it looks like our first question was from Bill, and it says, at Gates, have you considered a wheelchair accessible astronomy observatory to house a modern computer guided telescope for educational and recreational astronomy? Is that something you guys have thought about at all?
That's a very interesting idea, Bill. That did not come up in questions, but sounds like something that would be a really cool addition to the plan. I don't know, Mark, do you have any thoughts on that, on where that might fit and how that might work?
Well, he might have answered his own question with the second part of that. Is there a lot of are there dark sky issues there? And I would say probably yes, but I haven't done any. I honestly haven't designed an astronomy facility, and so I probably need to take a look at how that would exactly work. But there would be a lot of light surrounding Gates Park that may make that problematic.
Interesting idea. I know that there is an observatory. I don't know if it's still functional at the Hoover school site. And I think there have been issues with light interference at that site. I know folks go out to Hickory Hills and other surrounding parks to get away from the light pollution or whatever the proper term is, yeah. But would be a really neat addition. Along those lines, the new planetarium at the Grout is fantastic, and that's a wonderful opportunity for anyone who wants to learn about the night sky. They don't worry too much about light pollution there, but that's a really cool facility. Yeah. But great idea. I I'm sure it would be well received. Any other
Yeah.
questions?
There's a couple more that have come into the chat, and if anyone else has questions, you can keep sending them in there too. But first is, so gates will be done by summer of 2023?
That would be the hope, and done is a relative term. I think we did mention that the Chamberlain property needs some continuing cleanup to be ready. Mark, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? I know it's early in the contract, but AECOM was looking at some site issues there and what we might be able to do and not do. I think we maybe can start with some of it, but
yeah, I think we do have to get into the details more. We've been at a very high level master planning process, so we're really just now starting to dig into the details. And I think we won't have a finalized schedule until we work out. We also need to work with the bidding climate. We were evaluating how much we wanted to do this fall versus starting next spring, just from a bidding standpoint with fuel prices. And we had a very strange construction season. Everybody started really late, and so getting somebody to bid this fall is going to be difficult. But we're trying to work out what those details are and how much it'll be, and even how we're going to program the budget and where we're going to put these resources once we determine what our final budget is and what we can prioritize and how we work that out. So we have some walking to do with the city on this before we can finalize that schedule. All that to say, that our hope is to have these significant improvements wrapped up. I would probably more lean toward fall of 2023 would be realistic. By summer to me means June, and that's not going to happen. So I would probably say it'd be more like late in the year, in 2023 would be the goal.
Great. Another question was, aside from raising funds, what might be the biggest challenges of these projects?
oh goodness, always plenty of challenges. We'll probably would determine some of those as we wade through the actual design process. But the biggest challenge probably to date was bringing the whole community together and having a consensus on what these two parks should look like as a result of this big investment. So early on, and Felicia knows this well, there was a pretty strong feeling that if there's going to be a pool at one park, there better be a pool at both. And as we talk through that process and talk through about, other things that might be possible for the amount of money that would be spent on a pool, and face the reality from our master planner that let us see from the utilization standpoint that Gates Park is vastly underutilized for the last 10 years or so. That was difficult to arrive at a consensus, but I feel good about it now. Not everybody's probably 100% happy, but I think that we have a good overall consensus. Felicia, what do you think was most difficult? We still have to build it, obviously.
Understanding that equity doesn't mean the exact same things in different places. And we have to understand equity like that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like putting pickleball would be much more popular in some areas than others. And so investing $100,000 in two neighborhoods in pickleball courts in both, because that's equal. But if one neighborhood enjoys pickleball more than the other one, it's not equitable. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I think that we had to get comfortable with the idea of equity not meaning identical things. We wanted a park that people would use, and that they see as a destination park. And I use this term because Byrnes is a destination park. People drive to Byrnes to do things. That's why it has a parking lot, because it's a destination. Gates was a destination park, but not for swimming. So we actually looked at and talked about what do people use Gates for, and when has it been the most used, and to really talk about, then let's ball out and make this the best thing for what people use this park for. So really challenging that equity piece, and also being honest with ourselves as a city team that got to do something everywhere. It just doesn't have to be the same thing, but we got to do something in both parks, and that it stay the aquatics plan and keeping it as such, as opposed to we're going to do Byrnes first, we're going to do Gates second, or we'll do Gates in 5 years, and seeing it as a plan was both the challenge, and I applaud Paul for taking on that challenge, because it's a much bigger bite. It's a much bigger ask. But the equity in the fact that that's the ask is just what's beautiful about this. But really looking at, what do people want to use? Like what will that part be used for? And what's cool about it is being used now in the condition that it's in. So I know that when it's done, oh, it's going to be amazing. It's going to speak so highly to the community. And it's a part of the trail. If we can get that park where it's at, the Allen Trail will connect to the park at the corner. And I want everyone on the call to act, like Paul talks about it lightly in passing, but it's a plan for over a brownfield. And we talk about that in Waterloo, but like it was an Aaron Brockovich situation, sad faces, not happy. We were being talked about by the EPA. And so the fact that now there's a plan that can take this space, utilize it in a safe way, and we can move that just block of blight, of toxic blight, but move that, take that gate down and turn it into something beautiful. As corny as it sounds, the metaphor of that being a pollinator that creates life, when once it was destroying life. I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but that's a big piece of this that I even think we as the team gloss over. That's a big deal, because we fought that. Like that was a city legal fight for a long time. And so having the opportunity to grow that in a healthy way, I'm really excited about that as well.
Thanks, Felicia. Mark, any challenges you want to touch on?
I think you've both done well. Obviously just getting to prioritizing and utilizing the funds the best, getting the most out of them that we can. That's our goal. And keeping the public informed and supportive of what happens is important to us. So.
All right, and we are already at noon here. So thank you so much to Paul and Mark and Felicia for joining us today. I could tell by we still have some comments coming in. So I know that this is something our community is really excited about. And so thank you so much, the three of you, for all of the work that you've put in so far to work alongside our community and really listen to what our neighbors are wanting out of those parks, and for all of the future work, like Paul said, still needs to be built. So we will be cheering you on and supporting you along the way too. So thank you for joining us today. And thank you for everybody who hopped on to hear more about these plans as well. Like I said, we'll be sending out a recording so you can rewatch or send out to anyone else as well. And our next Windows on Waterloo will be on Wednesday, August 3rd at 11 o'clock. And we will have Eric Birch from the Lost Island Theme Park joining us. So it'll be fun. They'll have a couple of months of operation under their belts, and we'll get to hear about how that's going out of the theme park. So thank you so much to everybody for joining us.
Thank you, Paige. Thank you, Aaron. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks.
Absolutely.